Welcome back to Dizzy Live, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Well, with me in the studio right now, I have, Professor Akinterewa is not here, but I have Professor David Aworawo. He just told me that I should learn to pronounce his name properly. Professor of International Relations at the University of Lagos. And also, Professor Anthony Kila. Professor Anthony Kila is right here. And we have today Chike Ogea. And I was saying before we went on break that, well, it's a pity that Professor Akinterewa is not here. He usually sings for him. And the song is Chike, Chike Ogea. Chike, Chike. Chike, dance now. I'm singing for you. Chike, Chike, Ogea. Chike, Chike. Well, it's good to have you back. Chike Ogea, one of our, strong pillars of support here at Arise News. Well, quickly, we have had 3 guests. We had Professor Jidofo Adibe talking lightly about independent candidacy and also other issues. We have had also on this program, who was our last guest now?
Ambassador Keshi.
Ambassador Joe Keshi talking about visa restrictions. And we've also had on the program, who? Mr. Dankunle, talking about the plan to inaugurate the Dangote Refinery tomorrow and the implications for the economy, for the regional market, and what it means to have, that, private sector intervention in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. So let's take that first. Who do I start with? Yeah. Well, Chike Ogea, I will come to you first because you've not been around for some time. If you could just comment on some of those issues that we have treated.
Well, it's good to be back after a while. I'm happy to see my fellow professors here. You just threw me in the middle of a lot of professors. But I can't even find Professor Akinterewa. I hear he's on assignment somewhere. These are very exciting times in Nigeria. There's no doubt about it. And whichever of the topics we begin with, it is important that we look at them critically as they seem, to be. If we start first with what I would say it's maybe the up and up story right now in the country, which is the inauguration of the Dangote Refinery. That brings a lot of joy to the country. There's no doubt about that because we are told that when this refinery starts working at full capacity, we will have enough to satisfy our domestic needs and even have enough to satisfy our regional needs. And that was why I think it was Professor Adibe that actually alluded to the fact that we are looking at a situation where Nigeria can now really begin to play its big brother role in Africa. We also know that there are a lot of derivatives, the fertilizer plant, the different aspects of the refinery that will come into play when the refinery is ready. And it is a source of great joy and it's something Nigerians should be very happy about. Then we went again to look at the situation of the independent candidacy across Nigeria. And to me, that is a very funny one because the law as it stands, that whole 20% of getting 20% of the voters to agree, for someone to stand there. I don't even know how that will be conducted, if you ask me. I don't see the way that can happen. And if we really want to encourage independent candidacy, I think that law should be taken out of it. I don't even want to go into the whole idea of whether they already have the 2/3 they need from all the other assemblies to pass the law, because they said it was just Gombe Assembly that was left. And now Gombe has given its assent, which means that law could be passed. But I'm looking at the practicality of the law, not just, even if they do pass the law. Is it practical? Is it something that is workable? Can anybody go through that crucible and come out on the other side and say, yes, we can do this? Those are the kind of things I'm looking at, Again, they talked about these visa sanctions. I think it was Professor Keshi that talked about it. And my belief is like him, basically. Why should we in Nigeria, a sovereign state since 1961, be depending on America to do a dirty job for us? It doesn't make sense to me at all. If indeed there were infractions during the elections and people in a time and day like now of social media and all of that, and people were seen and responsible for having done these things, I think these people should be brought to book by Nigerian law. I mean, there was a very ridiculous situation of a returning officer, I think, who announced the result that he was not supposed to announce, and then a private jet took him off somewhere. He was in hiding for a while. Then he came out. Then, they started money coddling the whole thing, and, you don't even know what's going on. So I think that we have to be serious with ourselves before others can be serious with us. So this one that I've even seen so many fake lists being circulated around, people wanting the people they think are responsible to be denied visas. And if you ask me, denying a man a visa to go to America, how is that even a punishment? How are you sure he wants to go to America? What makes America think anybody wants to come there anyway? So we should put a situation in place where we will take care of our issues and handle them appropriately, if you ask me.
Okay, Professor Aworawo, your response to the submissions by Professor Adibe, Dankunle, and also, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Maybe you start with Ambassador Joe Keshi, since that's your territory.
Yes. The point is well made that they trying to sanitize the electoral process, punish offenders, those who have broken the law in the course of the election, should begin here. And the fact that we don't have virtually anybody being prosecuted yet, even the one that is so glaring that Chike is referring to, actually not the returning officer, the REC of Adamawa. It was granted bail, and we said a fortnight ago that we are eagerly expectant. What happens after that? There seems to be definite silence from that end. Let's hope that they are preparing, and then that is just the lull before the storm, so to speak. Let's hope that, because that one was too glaring. But what about all the other, tens of thousands of others across the country? It has always been like that. People rig elections and nothing happens. So it's not the United States we should be waiting for to, assist us to prosecute those who have committed offense here. It is the Nigerian state that should do that. Well, that could complement, because we have many people who are interested in going to the U.S. If you say, don't go to the U.S., it's as if you have taken, their blood from their veins. So that could complement, but basically it should be a domestic issue. The Nigerian state should be serious about trying to sanitize the electoral process, and by so doing, those who have broken the law in the course of election have to be, punished. We haven't seen that yet, but will that happen? Well, let's wait and see. As for independent candidacy, I also agree with Chike and even our guest on the subject. It is good because it will enable some people to ventilate their political ambitions. There are people who have been, maybe a group of people in a political party will just gang up and then shut them out. And they think they are popular enough on their own to go ahead and win election. So to provide space for such people. But the practical dimension of the whole thing is problematic. Certainly, maybe not the presidency. Maybe at the local level, you could have individuals who might. But at the presidential level, it is almost impossible to imagine that one individual will present himself and he'll go ahead to win the election. Even in the United States, it has never happened before. But let's see how it turns out. I mean, we are trying to tinker with our electoral laws, electoral process, to get the best. And let's see how it plays out. But the practical aspect is problematic. Then the Dangote Refinery, at least we have something cheering to talk about. You know, it has been this election, the news is dominated by the court cases about the election, whether it will be televised or not, live, and all that. And the whole thing is even depressing. And those who are saying, oh, Asiwaju will not be sworn in, and others who say, oh, he has to be sworn in. I mean, you can't treat him differently, and I agree with them, you know, with the second group. I mean, if the legal process is not concluded, Asiwaju has to be sworn in. Let it continue, and let us see how everything unfolds after that. But we have a cherry, I mean, something to make one happy, and that is the Dangote Refinery. You know, you make comments regarding messages that people are sending that, oh, it's an aberration and all that. Well, if you speak of an aberration, it's on the part of government. Government that has 4 refineries, unable to maintain them, none of them is working. And none has been built since 1980, when, you know, the last one in Kaduna was launched. It's a shame. 1980 to now, how many years is that? So it's something we are happy about. We hope that everything will go smoothly. And we also hope that, you know, plans have been put in place such that when a turnaround maintenance of the refinery is due, it won't disrupt the free flow of, you know, supply of products moving forward and all that. I mean, when we look at how much Nigeria is spending on subsidy, and we now have this kind of project that will help us deal with that, you know, it is something that is that one is happy about. I agree with Mr. Dankule that, you know, it's a free market. It takes a whole lot of risk. Dangote could have lost all he ever has if the project, you know, hadn't gone smoothly the way it has. And of course, there were periods in between that there were apprehension as to, would this project ever be concluded? But we are happy now that tomorrow the thing will be commissioned and then, you know, production will commence. It's something that all of us should be happy about, and it's something that will also add to Nigeria's profile on a global scale. Ability to, you know, also extend influence in West Africa. If we're able to meet our domestic needs, and of course, we're able to also to supply to other countries in the sub-region.
Yeah, very good, Professor Aworawo. If I were to translate that into Yoruba language, it's a very strong name. Aworiawo. But it's okay. That's not the subject before us. Professor Aworawo, thank you very much. But Professor Kila, let me come to you. He was raising the point about independent candidacy, the conditions that have been put before the president of Nigeria. 20% of registered voters for anybody to be an independent candidate as president or as a member of the National Assembly or as governor of a state. Do you think that that makes sense? And then also the other issues before us, the visa sanctions by the United States, discussed at length by Ambassador Joe Keshi, and also the Dangote Refinery as a game changer, as Mr. Dankule argued.
Well, let me start from where you stopped, you know, from the Dangote Refinery thing, and, you know, but let me praise my thought by saying that operators and defenders tend to attack, support policies and events. You know, you celebrate it, but I think thinkers have the duty of providing clarifications and seeking improvements. Let me premise by saying that. And let me say that I agree that the Dangote project, the refinery project in this case, is a good project. Anything that will increase production in Nigeria is a good project. It's a thing that should cause hope, at least. You know, not joy yet. It is hope, because we haven't seen a drop of the oil they're going to produce. But, you know, it gives us hope that something good would be happen. And I disagree with Professor Aworawo when he says all we have is matter of going to court or not. Some people are happy about the election. Some people are very excited about it. Some people are happy they're not going to court. I'm not one of them, but I recognize that others are happy that way. The Dangote project brings hope, but let's just look at it from two sides. I agree with the person that sent you a message to say that we have a risk of monopoly here. When Mr. Dankule spoke and talked about an open market, he speaks like a professor. He's being theoretical. in reality, it's not just anybody that can wake up in Nigeria to do a refinery. The history and story of the Dangote project is a story of monopoly, a story of privilege that anybody that studies or acts in the market knows. I wish him all the best, because he's where he's there. But we cannot overlook the fact that if we want the system to work, we cannot build it around one man. Congratulations for the pioneer, which I'm a big believer, in pioneering on the private market. But as a system, we have to look at how to make sure that one subject does not benefit to the disadvantage of the very many. It's very important to look at that. But that said, those are details that are important, but they should be said. It is also important to notice, though, that the Dangote project, because this is near my place in Ekpe here, around here, is a jaundiced development. The private entity that is going to do the refinery is doing well. The state has not done roads, they've not done schools, they've not done facilities. Traffic is going to be heavy unless somebody is doing what we do not know. That is not the kind of development that is worthy of the era in which we live in. The kind of development we work is planned development. We're talking Milton Keynes, we're talking some part of Arkansas in America, we're talking of parts in the world where you go into the desert, you go to a place, you take one development and you build an ecosystem that from day one creates jobs, bring development, and that when the operation starts, individual citizens do not suffer in view of a better future. That is an archaic way of doing things. The way things are done now, you don't need to stress. That's why you have electronic, that's why you have Google. You don't need to spend 10 hours in a library packing books like people like Professor Rao did when they were studying, that they had to go from one library to the other to just get 2 or 3 chapters. These days, you stay on your laptop and everything is there for you. That is the new world and we need to learn it. So, good thing about the Dangote, kudos to the private sectors, the public sector, and the rest of us need to do more on that. On independent candidates, my view is that there's a general misconception in the country and we need to educate ourselves. I think a lot of people thought in their mind that the idea of general independent candidates is that anybody will just stand up and start to contest. If we do that, we're going to have a lot of pretenders acting as if they're contenders. We're going to have people who will do Photoshop, put their name on it and say they're running for president or running for governor. At the moment, they already knew that. In the studio, in the past election, some people came up to say they are running. We never see what happened to them later. Right at the conventions, including that of the APC, some people bought 100 million naira tickets only to step down immediately. Those are what I call pretenders. A serious system cannot afford that. And that is why that caveat is there to say you need a cogent amount of signatures to prove that you are not a pretender, you're a contender. Is the percentage too much? It can be discussed. For full disclosure, I do not believe it's too much. Because the truth of the matter is that if you want to rule Nigeria and you cannot pull together a team of people that will gather votes for you, then you're not ready to do it. And by the way, regardless of what you think of Peter Obi, I argue that if Peter Obi had been an independent candidate, he would have met that criteria that we're talking about now, the ability to gather so much votes across the country. One, because there's galvanization, there's a process to it. Two, because there is a digital process which makes things easier. We should not keep thinking that the way to make things happen is to go to one voter at a time. You set up a website, you do a huge campaign, you will get millions of people endorsing you. And if you have a good message and you have a good image yourself, you get people to support you. The rationale of independent candidacy is based on two things. One is to free individuals from the shackles of party oligarchy and party mafia. As Dr. Awura was rightly said, that does not allow people to express themselves. Awura is Awura. Is Awura. Is Awura.
Ologini Romekun.
The other one, the other part of it is that to allow people to free themselves from that so they can express themselves. But also is to prevent the proliferation of candidates. So we need to strike a balance there. And the same way, when we look at the American situation with the visa thing, personally, I think that people should be named. Because otherwise, Why do you say restrict them or you're naming them? And you're not naming them, but there are three sides we need to look at it. Number one, Chikyogia pointed out, why is it important that people are restricted? Why are they banning their visa? Because this is a country where the elite, the people ruling us, go abroad for toothache. This is a country where if you look at any cabinet, from state level to federal level, most of their children are studying abroad. So the truth of the matter, if we want to say it as it is that actually they're more prone to be disciplined by foreign government, by Nigerian government. Because Nigeria is where they make money, abroad is where they invest it. Abroad is where they save it. They just take it out of here. So in reality, the real teacher, as Fela Kuti has said, the real teacher is Onyibo for them, to use the African 70 language. They do not care about Nigeria. Nigeria means nothing to them. They can break the law here and walk away. It is their ability to access foreign health service, foreign education, foreign this, foreign that matters to them. So the visiting matters. Whilst I believe it should be named, but we should also be careful of one thing. America, Ambassador Keshi explained to us why America has the moral authority to defend democracy. America can decide who can come into their country, but they cannot tell you who to prosecute. If they, and this is important, and I want viewers to follow me carefully. Whilst we want them, commonsensically, it is right for them to show us a list of the people they've banned. But it is an administrative measure. If they show us a list, it will be an indictment. To do that, they have to go to the court of law to say, we believe, based on investigation, that this person has committed this crime. Then it becomes a matter of law. But in a matter of administration, you cannot do that because you can just, it's a discretion to say, based on our intelligence, we think this person is bad for democracy, so we can ban him. So they can do that without naming them. And that's the balance, so we need to understand that.
Well, let's see if we can take more topics. Let's talk inflation. Nigeria's headline inflation rate increased to 22.22% in April 2023 from 22.04% the previous month, an increase of 0.1 percentage points. The National Bureau of Statistics has just released its most recent Consumer Price Index report, which shows that Nigeria's inflation rate has risen for 4 months running, and is still the highest it has been in 17 years. Despite numerous interest rate increases by the central bank to control the growing rate, Nigeria's inflation rate maintains its upward trend. Between May 2017 and March 2023, the Central Bank of Nigeria raised the monetary policy rate from 11.5% to 18%. In the wake of the publication of these latest inflation figures, Garuba Shehu, spokesperson of the Nigerian president, sought to absolve the government. Shehu said the inflation being experienced in Nigeria is a worldwide problem and that no nation is immune to it because of the global downturn, economic downturn, and the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. He argued that anyone linking Buhari's administration to inflation is not paying attention to prevailing facts. I'll come back to you again, Chikyogia. You are a businessman. You've been in business almost forever. You are still in business. Under President Yaradua, debt service to revenue ratio was 12.3%. Under President Jonathan, the highest that was recorded in 2014 was 24.6%. Under President Buhari, it went up to 33% in 2016. As of 2022, debt service to revenue ratio was 112%, as reported by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And then you see inflation, galloping inflation. And those who know the subject say it will get worse, and that Nigerians should prepare for terrible times after President Buhari. But Garuba Shehu says, well, this is what is happening in other parts of the world. After all, in Turkey, inflation is over 80%. In Sri Lanka, it's over 80% also. In Lebanon, it's over 100%. In some other, in Syria, it's over 1,000%. Chikogia, what should we do?
Well. You see, when we want to look at our situation, it makes better sense to critically analyze what our situation is and leave what's going on elsewhere, because we're just giving ourselves false comfort. The truth is that, yes, there was COVID-19 and there's the Ukraine crisis affecting global economy, definitely. But bottom line is, what is of value does Nigeria have to offer the world to boost its foreign exchange or its reserves? That is the bottom line. We are a monoproduct economy. We keep chanting this beyond oil slogan and all that, and trying to develop, maybe there are some efforts in agriculture and one or two other things. Okay, the young people are opening up the digital space and the digital economy. But I don't think that is enough. And it's simple, you can't give what you don't have. And if basically your reserves are lean, and then you go on this kind of crazy borrowing that we've gone on that has spiked up to 112%. What is happening? You don't need to be a soothsayer or any genius to understand where we are. So, of course, the spokespeople will do their work, say what they have to say. The good news is that we are counting down in days and hours for this government to go, so that they can take their knees off our necks and we can breathe again. Well, I'm one of the few Nigerians looking forward to this new administration. Yes, a lot of people are like, why do you say that? After all, the APC is giving birth to the APC and all that. I can say, yes, it's true. APC is giving birth to APC. But there are different people coming in, and I want to give them a chance. If anything, we saw what Tinubu did in Lagos. Now, the matter of the election is a different thing. I have a feeling that he's going to be dogged by the legitimacy of that candidacy, and that will be a problem. But if we can go beyond that and maybe just give him a chance, and let's see what the next 1 year will look like, of course, depending on what the court says, because the court has the final say. As a lawyer, I know that there is no talk about not swearing in anybody and all of that. We've been doing that all this time. Why should this time be different? Of course, come May 29, except a court of competent jurisdiction, which is either the tribunal or the Supreme Court, and no other court. You see, because these politicians started playing these games they normally play, where you see them running to high courts in different jurisdictions and shopping for judgments. Those are all distractions. And I think that kind of rascality needs to stop. We are almost going back to the days of ABN and Zeribe. That is what it looks like we're trying to do here. So, as far as I'm concerned, we have a monoproduct economy. We've gone on these crazy borrowings, and what we're seeing is the result of that. It's simple.
Okay, it's even worse, Professor Kila. Fiscal debt is 49 trillion. Ways and means is 22.8 trillion. And it looks like it will get really worse.
Well, you see, there's something that is said that if you don't tell the wicked villager that he's doing something bad, he'll keep saying we're helping the village together. So somebody needs to be called out. I think someone needs to tell Gabashew, I can't, I'm trying to find a very calm, diplomatic, polite way to say that his statement is a collection of vexatious nonsense. It is clear.
Be careful.
Well,
Garubashew is my friend.
Yeah,
He's
you are a
brother.
spokesman. You were a spokesman before. We know you. We know those of you who go to say this kind of thing on TV. Gabashew is making us believe that the president and the administration has nothing to do with the situation we find ourselves. Of course, they have a whole lot to do. The problem we have with our galloping inflation is because we're underproducing. We've tried, they're pushing the burden of fixing the economy on monetary policy, and they're pushing the CBN to tinkle with interest rate. But our problem is not a monetary issue. Our problem is productive issues, is that we're not producing enough things. What we need to do, and I say this, not to spite your friend Gabashew or to fight the outgoing president, but to show that the incoming administration has to be conscious that the outgoing one has not done well enough. Actually, that one has failed on many cases. Let's be clear about it. We need to focus on producing a lot of things. The reason why we have inflation is because there is too much money chasing a few things. The way to do it is not to reduce the amount of money in circulation, but to increase the amount of goods and services that we have. And the reason why we're not producing enough, contrary to what Gabashew says, is not due to COVID. It's because the land are not secure, because people cannot go to their farms, because people cannot transport the filtering that they are making from the rural area to the urban area. So the incoming administration has to focus on security, economy, employment, and growth. And by doing that, you will now increase the base so that there will be more things to produce, more things to sell. And when you increase the supply, you're likely to reduce the price as well, because supply will meet the demand. I am not allergic to borrowing. I understand the moral thing, as Shakespeare would say, be not a borrower or a lender. I understand that philosophy, but there's nothing wrong in borrowing if what you borrow for, it is seen, and what you borrow for will generate enough revenue, not only to pay back the capital, but also to pay the interest. So it's not the borrowing that borrows me, it's what we do with it. We have increased our spending in the last 8 years, and this must be said. People must remember, we have increased our spending in the last 8 years, but we have not increased our production. So we're a country taking money, and we do not see what we're using it for. Save, but just to know we're not blind. Save for the infrastructure that we see. We know what the likes of Amechi and Rotimi and Fashola have done. Those are the two ministries that we can say this is what we see that they've done. The rest we do not know.
Well, Professor Awurawo, your take.
Well, there are times that silence is golden.
Yeah.
I will have just, if I were Gabashew, I would just be quiet on this issue of, the cause of the inflation and how much the government is involved in what has happened. It is true, as he said, we had COVID, then we have this invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But when you look at the different categories of countries in the world, Nigeria is the only country in that bracket of oil producers that has this kind of high inflation.
And look at the people they compare us to.
Yes. The countries we are being compared with are not in the same bracket as Nigeria. In fact, other countries like Saudi Arabia, Angola, and the rest of them, they do not have any problem with inflation at all. They have even benefited because the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has made oil price go high. These countries have produced more. They've earned foreign currency, and so their inflation is low. So to begin to talk about COVID forever and talk about the invasion, we do not belong to that bracket of countries that have this inflation. The problem, just like Professor Kila has said, is that we have not managed the economy well. We have not done the things that need to be done. For instance, petroleum production, or even let's just focus on that monocrop thing. The volume of petroleum products, crude oil that we export, has gone down drastically over time. It was 2.2 million at some point. It came down to 900,000. It went up to about 1.2. It has come down to 1.1. And of course, all of the proceeds from it goes into a subsidy. And so we are like a non-oil producing country, even though we are an oil producing country. So if we have to look at that alone, in addition to, of course, the fact that the farmers can't go to farm because of violence in several parts of the country and several other. So the economy has not been well managed. That is just the bottom line. And the government, of course, if the economy is not well managed, who do you hold responsible? Take, for instance, the 800 million they are going to take. They want to take quickly, dollars, to share. They say they want to do constitutional transfer. What do you want to take on? You say you want to take $800 million to cushion the effect of subsidy. Now you're no longer taking the subsidy, removing the subsidy. Why do you want to go and collect 100 million and share within a few days before the admission with this high 112% of our total earning being used to service debt? That does not make economic sense. So the bottom line is that the economy has not been well managed, and the government cannot absorb itself from this high rate of inflation. The next government coming, we know, understands the dynamics and hope we'll do far better. So we can begin to, focus on the right things to do and record development that we desire.
Okay, thank you, Professor Awurawo. Let's take one more topic, but maybe only one person can comment on that. Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, this past week, presided over a special meeting of the Federal Executive Council. It was gathered that the purpose of the unusual gathering was to ensure that the Buhari administration covers all necessary grounds before the expiration of its term and hand over to the incoming government on May 29, 2023. Okay, the outgoing administration wants to cover all grounds in just one meeting. At that special meeting, over which Vice President Osinbajo presided, 37 memos were considered. And we've seen the government, doing all sorts of things, fiscal measures approved, all kinds of projects being approved. Chike Ogea, you were once in government,
exactly.
Right? You were in government. You've been commissioner.
That is why I lose no.
So
that is why I lose no sleep about this. I lose no sleep. If you recall, when all this was going on, I think it was Ben Akabweze that came out and said, "Look, this thing cannot work. There's no money anymore and all that." That was even good because in our own case in Delta, when I was a commissioner, when that kind of thing, towards the end of the regime, and you find out that there are a lot of things you have left undone, and you're trying to see what you can do, our accountant general just simply disappeared. We just couldn't find, the guy just got lost and never showed up again till inauguration. So what I'm saying is that government is a continuum. Yes, the government, you've had 8 years. What happened? It's always like that. Even the next government, it will happen too. Because there's so much to do. You can never do it all. But what the good news is this. Even if they approve all these things, it's all going to be subject to the availability of the funds. Because all the things you hear, approved, there are no funds for it. And Ruben, so why are you even passing the buck to me?
Well, thank you very much, Chike Ogea. Good to have you on the program. I'm sure that Professor Akintenewa is watching and will be singing Chike Ogea, Chike.
Yes, I miss Prof.
Professor Awurawo, okay. Ologini Romekun,
the Awurawo is not the Ologini type. It means it is people who spoil people. Really? It's an advice against bad association.
Okay. Yes. But when you say Awurawo, Professor Kila, who is, what is that your title again in your village?
I won't tell you.
He is a Balogun. Yeah, he knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
But you've been watching This Is Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.